This week on Right Now, Pfizer whistleblower Brooke Jackson is on the line from the USA to tell us about her lawsuit against the pharmaceutical giant. Brooke has evidence that the vaccine trials falsified data and unblinded participants. This evidence that she provided to the FDA that then led to her dismissal. To watch the full interview with all our guests, including health educator Clive DeCarl, podcasters R&J Insight and former UB40 vocalist Matt Hoy, click onto Ickonic.com to start your free 7-day trial. Hello and welcome to Right Now. As expected, the price cap on energy prices in the UK will increase by 80% in October. That will cripple people. But then that's the idea, isn't it? Let's be honest. It would take a naivety beyond comprehension to still think this isn't being done by design. Of course, the poorest will be hit hardest. The elderly, families with young children, babies, forced to sit in the freezing cold, unable to afford a hot meal. But this spreads even further than our homes. You think the chip shop, or the kids' soft play, or the ice rink, or the pub, or the soup kitchen can afford the bills? Every business uses energy. Every food producer, every food transporter, food wholesaler, food seller, all being hit in exactly the same way as the families. So what happens? Everything goes up in price to try and fill that financial void, but everyone is being hit, so the money isn't there. So the businesses go under, and now those employees that have huge energy bills at home suddenly don't have an income. Everything dies, our way of life, and everything we take for granted. The restaurant where you first met your wife, the ballet school where your daughter first performed, gone. Yeah, I'm just nipping to the pub, love, to meet the lads. What pub? There's no pub. That's gone, mate. Everything's gone. The Rona era was the biggest wealth grab in modern history, and it's about to become a distant second. Now, politicians aren't going to save you, because even the ones that aren't in the pockets of those that seek to destroy us, they don't care about energy bills because they don't pay them. You do. And this is where 2 years of compliance gets you. It's time to stand up, folks, or forever regret not doing it. Our first guest tonight is a whistleblower who is suing Pfizer for falsifying data during their COVID-19 vaccine trials. Brooke Jackson was a regional director for Ventavia, a company that Pfizer subcontracted to for a brief period in 2020, but was fired after she notified the FDA about issues with Pfizer's vaccine trials. After she was fired, she gave the BMJ, the British Medical Journal, a cache of internal company documents, photos and recordings highlighting the alleged wrongdoing. Documents showed evidence of falsifying data and unblinding trial participants. Since then, Pfizer has sought to get the lawsuit dismissed because they say the US government was aware of the wrongdoing, but it still continued to work with them. That's quite some logic right there. Brooke, you're working on the Pfizer vaccine trials. At what point did you start to think, hang on, something's not right here?
Thank you for having me, Gareth. Day one, as soon as I walked into the clinical trial site, I recognized things right away that, in all of my 20 years of being involved in clinical trials, had never seen before. We were severely understaffed, and I think that was one of the main problems that the company had, was just a lack of staff, a lack of appropriate space to see these clinical trial patients. So again, just right away, as soon as I walked in the door.
Was that something that you think was intentional? It was almost like, if you kind of overwhelm the number of people that are doing the trials, then you're going to be able to skip things and kind of cut corners and stuff like that.
I think it was greed. Right. Ventavia was aware that they were understaffed, that they did not have, the infrastructure to run this large trial. So money and for Ventavia, I never saw an actual clinical trial budget, but in my experience negotiating those types of budgets and negotiating these types of clinical trial agreements, I estimate that they were getting approximately $7,000 to $10,000 per patient.
And how many patients are we talking?
So I know in the overall safety and efficacy analysis that was used for FDA and what the approval, the very first approval, was based on, Ventavia was responsible for about 1,000 of the patients that were enrolled in the trial out of 44,000.
Right. Okay.
So
So
it's
it's good money.
ended up being, oh yeah, absolutely, multi-million-dollar contract, which has led to additional contracts with Pfizer directly.
Of course. So you kind of blew the whistle on this. You went to the FDA. They let you go, and obviously now you're in the middle of a lawsuit with them. And I was reading today the fact that Pfizer's kind of like their excuse really is the fact that, well, the government knew that this was going on, so it kind of doesn't matter. Which is it's kind of blown my mind a little bit. That it's almost to be that sort of candid with it. We're not really bothered. That's extraordinary, and that's literally their excuse, that they knew, so that's fine.
That's one of their arguments and reasons, that were outlined in their actual motion to dismiss. So it's that, and which is materiality in the type of lawsuit that I filed, and also the type of contract that was negotiated with the Department of Defense, which did not require the company Pfizer to follow any of the standard regulations that govern contracts in general or those that govern clinical research.
That's
So they're basically trying. It is extraordinary. I feel like I've lived in a state of shock for the last 2.5 years, and reading their motion to dismiss. Wow.
Why do you think that the US administration kind of looked the other way on it? Because I kind of think, if you're responsible for 300 million people, in the end, if someone's falsifying data, safety, it's going to come back and bite you in the end, as it seems to be doing. People are going to be injured and die.
This is just my opinion, but I believe that when the FDA was made aware in early September of what was going on, I eventually had a one-on-one call with FDA, with the Department of Justice, Health and Human Services, the Office of the Inspector General. I was on the phone call with these people, and I really believe that they felt that the 1,000 patients and what I was explaining that happened during these clinical trials were not material to the overall safety and the overall efficacy. But what I did report, the unblinding of the patients, the improper storage of the vaccine, that list goes on, were all material to what and how Pfizer was able to receive their very first emergency use authorization. I think it was the number.
See, Pfizer has a history. Just a brief look into them shows that they have a history of falsifying data, and they've paid astronomically massive, like ridiculously huge fines as a result of that. Can you see Pfizer facing justice in the same way for what is becoming now a bit of a catastrophe with COVID jabs?
Based on the history and the Department of Justice and their handling of these previous lawsuits, I'm not sure, to be honest. I think that this vaccine program has gone too far, and that there are means to make this go away. But I'm hopeful that there has to be accountability. There needs to be changes in our regulatory process, that approval process. And I'm running on hope these days, I feel. And I'm just hopeful that the judge in this particular case rules on facts and law alone. If he does that, this case is sealed. We win.
I think I'm the same as you, Brooke. I've been running on hope for the last 2 and a bit years. But when you first came out with this, there wasn't probably that much kind of appetite for it, because people don't want to know. People have that kind of attitude of no. Whereas now, it's pretty widely accepted now that actually, okay, yeah, there are adverse reactions. Okay, yeah, there are deaths, there are problems, and so maybe there is a bit more hope now in the fact that a judge might actually say, well, actually, I'm not gonna have my hands tied by this. I am going to actually judge fairly.
Again, I'm hopeful. This vaccine is misbranded. It is not as safe as they claimed it was, and it's not as effective as they claim it is. So again, if the judge rules solely on those facts and law, then this case is one for the American people, and in my opinion, the entire world.
It takes a lot of courage for you to, for one, speak out to the fact where you lose your job. I mean, losing your job is bad enough, but you're taking on an absolute pharmaceutical giant, and therefore, all the lawyers and all the dirty tricks that are associated with that. Have you ever felt intimidated at all?
Sure, sure. And especially initially, when I brought this information forward, it was in September of 2020, before any of the approvals were given, before the 95% was, just the miracle. This was going to stop the pandemic. If you got the vaccine, you weren't going to get sick. So, of course, I was hesitant initially to come forward, but after a conversation with my family, I knew it was the right thing to do. The data that was being collected at these clinical trial sites was so important. This, again, vaccine was going to be used worldwide, and at the time, I thought was going to be a very useful tool in helping to stop this pandemic. So initially, I was intimidated. I felt quite alone, but I just knew it was the right thing to do, and it was a quick conversation with my husband, and we made the decision that next day I was going to contact the FDA, and that's exactly what I did. And about 6.5 hours later is when I got the call from Ventavia that I was terminated effective immediately, and based on not being a good fit for the company.
Wow. Was that something you expected, though, that actually by taking the moral high ground as you did, that actually your career would probably be sacrificed as a result of that?
Well, I certainly didn't think that it was going to be the FDA that was responsible for taking my complaint and passing that along to Pfizer and then down to my former employer. I did not expect that. That's what we believe happens. But I knew, because I was making so many, I guess, waves, if you will, within the company, because I was just so adamant about changes to our standard operating procedures, that we follow the codes of federal regulations that govern research. Good clinical practice means that we are looking out for the safety, the welfare of these patients, their rights, and that mattered to me. And because I was speaking up so loudly, I felt that there would be something. I anticipated being terminated eventually. I just didn't know it was going to be right after I contacted the FDA.
Is that what this is about for you then, this lawsuit? It is about kind of, doing what's right, basically. And what do you hope to achieve by it? Is it a case of, bringing their misdeeds out into the open?
Absolutely. I have been called a hero quite often. I get messages all the time, and I'm so grateful and thankful for that. I need those prayers, those thoughts, but I don't feel like a hero in any sense of the word. I was doing my job. I knew it was the right thing to do, and that's it, the period. What I hope comes from this lawsuit is for the people that have been injured by this product. Again, I've just been so disappointed by my industry. I don't recognize the country that I live in currently, what is happening, and how things are being so politicized, and the censorship that's come. I feel like I'm in a nightmare, and there are people out there that are screaming to be heard. They are injured. Some people have lost their lives, and this is why I'm continuing to speak up and stand up, and it's for them. Policy and regulatory change is absolutely something that's going to have to happen, but that is way outside of my area of expertise. I don't even, and I don't even know what that looks like at this point, but that's why it's for people, period.
I think, yourself, we're speaking to Matt Hoy later in the show, who's also in a lawsuit against the founder of UB40, which was the band he was singing in. He lost his role in the band because he wouldn't take the jab. And so we're just hearing so many more lawsuits that are kicking off. It just feels like the way people like yourself, people like Matt, people were treated during this sort of COVID era is actually going to come back and really bite people in the backside. And I really hope it will, to be honest, because if you take this lawsuit, if you win this lawsuit, you have opened the floodgates here.
Yeah, I'm hopeful, and as part of the type of lawsuit that I brought forward, there is the potential that I will receive. If there is a successful recovery, there's a percentage of that money that goes directly towards me. When I filed this lawsuit back in January of 2021, I spoke to my attorney about this right away. I didn't want any of that money. I want that money to go into a fund for the vaccine injured. And that's that they are, I said this just the other day to somebody. I said, I feel like this is my obsession. And she said, Brooke, you really have to stop thinking of it as an obsession. This is your purpose. You have, there's a reason that you're here. And I had to stop for a second and really take that in. So I'm again doing this for the vaccine injured.
That's fantastic, and thanks so much for what you're doing. And the fact that you're going to obviously give the money to vaccine injured people is incredible. But just the fact that you're doing that and you've put yourself up above the parapet for all this, attacks and everything. I'm sure that there'll be more attacks coming from Pfizer. I doubt they'll go quietly, but to have that courage, it's amazing, and it will give courage to other people. I bet there'll be other people now that are looking at Brooke and going, do you know what? I'm going to stand up as well, and that's amazing.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I do encourage anybody that has information to come forward. This is it's the time to speak up. I do try to find a little bit of grace in my heart for those that have, not felt like they were in a position to do that before, but now there's too much data out there, that real world evidence that everybody speaks so highly about, to come forward. It's time.
Absolutely. There's a change coming. I can feel it. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Brooke, for talking to us, and thanks for everything that you're doing.
You're welcome.
Hello, I'm Jamie Icke, CEO and founder of Ickonic. People regularly ask me, why do we charge for our services? Well, the answer's simple. The ambition here is to build the biggest independent media platform in the world with the highest production standards. We recently introduced a brand new $7.99 pricing plan to make Ickonic affordable for all. For just a couple of cups of coffee a month, you can access the world's premier media source. Take out a 7-day free trial today and come and see what Ickonic has to offer.